music. That's my main occupation. I've been touring the world for the last couple decades. I've seen London, I've seen France, I've been to New York a million times. I've never been up in the Empire State Building. Never been to Buckingham Palace or Big Ben. I don't care about that kind of shit. I don't want to see the whitewashed surface. I'm interested in the unique spirit of a city. I want to kick it with the real folks. We all have our journey, whether we're traveling around or staying in one place. This is my journey. I'm Yoni Wolf, and this is...
I feel like Cincinnati always wants to have a party, but they're the first to be like, "Oh, use a coaster!"
I had a party and gave everybody haircuts. It was a goddamn mess, Sam. It was a mess.
I live in Cincinnati. I grew up here. I moved away for a long time, but I'm back. It's a German city. It's quite a conservative city, but there's a lot going on around the edges that's progressive. What about culture in Cincinnati? I feel like it's pretty rich compared to other Midwest cities. There's a lot going on in the arts here. How does this city inspire? Are there similar themes that somehow seep into the visual arts, music, the culinary scene? In many ways, it's very different than when I left. It's very much been revamped and gentrified, but it's quite a segregated city still. That hasn't changed. What are folks working on as far as social justice and change? What issues need to be addressed? It's a complicated city with a complicated past. And I know that word is kind of a cop-out, but I don't know how else to say it. So I'm gonna really check this city out like I never have before in all the years I've lived here. I'm gonna meet some new people and hopefully peel some layers away and find out what's really going on.
Little shots, little conversations.
Cincinnati is an average American city.
Cincinnati is in its youth. Cincinnati is undiscovered.
Thriving.
Cincinnati is love.
Cincinnati is complicated.
Complicated.
Tasty, that's for sure.
Cincinnati is trying to be something they're not.
Cincinnati is going down.
Up and coming.
Cincinnati is my beloved drunken uncle.
Cincinnati is, I got Rivertown. That's what it is.
Cincinnati is inherently racist.
Cincinnati is this weird place where north meets south, and there's all kinds of tension.
Oh, this might be too hard for me. I'm high right now.
That's surprising. Cincinnati is surprising.
Cincinnati is history. Like, real life.
Cincinnati is entropy and growth.
There's nothing they can do. No one needs to know. I take a broken toe to the grave. Like, save the date, but play dumb. When they come, always in a walking shoe or steel-toed boot.
I think from a certain standpoint, in a deeper way, on an existential level, the purpose of humans is to make music and art. Everything else, including abstract stuff like economies and governments and all that, is just survivalist. Music-wise, there's a lot going on in Cincinnati. A lot of great music is happening here now. Part of the reason I left Cincinnati in 2001 is because I felt like the music scene was too conservative, especially in the hip-hop world, which I was in. I don't think that's really the case anymore. There's also a lot of great, dirty punk, garage-style music coming out of Cincinnati. I don't know too much about that stuff. I want to learn more. Is there a Cincinnati sound, or are there some different watermarks that identify groups as being from Cincinnati? Who's making a statement coming out of this place? Who's expressing themselves in a fresh way?
Hey, that was great. Yeah, wait, what's it?
It was just a fight.
I am that person who you say something about Cincinnati and I'm on you.
It was about mopeds. You know, we were like, what do we say about mopeds, you know? Downtown. Just came to mind.
So you think here people are resigned to obscurity and just sort of...
Yeah, you know, we kind of own it. You know, we own that obscurity. We, you know, no one's looking, so we're dancing with the lights off, you know.
The first show that Tweens ever played, like we started the set and I played the first note wrong. I'll never forget that.
And that's why we called ourselves WUSSY, because we wanted to reclaim the word. It's like, fuck you, you know,
Yeah.
we're wussies, get over it.
Will you sit around then and actually write songs in a room with people?
Yeah, I mean, you know how that goes. Sometimes the most inane, stupid thing you're doing, you know, just fucking around over to the side and somebody says, hey, keep playing that. And that becomes like the best, like that Teenage Wasteland came from that. I was just doing that I was just having fun. I was like, I didn't expect it to land in anything. And Lisa's like, keep doing that. And that's how the song came about. And it's great because I never have to change chords.
Right.
It drives other people crazy, but I can do it for hours. And I don't even have to be drugged. John Curley and I one time sat around in here for like 5 hours with me making monkey noises and breaking glass to put in the middle of a song, and we were so proud of it. And then the rest of the band came in and they're like, this is shit, what the fuck?
You're not precious about the material.
No, fuck. I think I was maybe a little more precious about it when I was younger, you know. Well, I'm a genius. No, you're not.
I never thought I could play in a band. I would book shows. I would book shows in basements and stuff. I kind of like wanted to be a part of it somehow. I didn't really think I was capable of being a musician. Maybe I valued it too much. I was like, I can't do that. We started playing cover songs for fun, and Jerry taught me a power chord, and I started to learn how to play guitar, and I started writing songs. We released one song. We put that online, and a couple days later, we got an email from French Kiss.
You had been playing music for like a year. Do you rise to the occasion, or do you like feel like you're choking the whole time?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I kind of was like, fake it till you make it, baby. Just do it.
I started rapping probably about 6 or 7 years ago. I started doing Eugenius about 4 or 5 years ago. I like to take all my other influences, you know, from hardcore punk, indie rock, and just kind of make them into what I think hip-hop should sound like.
I stutter sometimes when I talk, but not when I'm on this mic. The only time I really read is when I recite what I write.
What does the process tend to be? Are you recording at home? Are you recording here in the practice space? Or
I do everything at home. I have a spare bedroom, and I record all the beats and vocals there and mix and master. It's all in-house, literally.
I can trust. Only one voice in my ear that I hear, and it was so clear. It's saying that you should quit. It's saying that you a shit.
Gotta get in on the ground floor of that music cryptocurrency.
The Macklemore thing, how the fuck did that happen?
Budo he's a producer of Macklemore, but he's also in Macklemore's band. Foxy was doing Warped Tour one year, and he saw us. Like, I got a phone call saying, do you want to work on a Macklemore song? Obviously said yes. And they flew me out the next couple days, and like, they were working on this song. We just all sat there in like a little circle and worked together.
Not only, like, you know, did they ask you to do it, but you came out with all guns blazing.
Yeah.
Stepped up to the challenge and knocked it down. Like, how has that changed your life?
I kind of had that guns blazing approach my whole career, and I think they were the first ones in a way that just kind of was like, why aren't you
Why is this dude not huge?
Yeah, and I kind of felt like it was like a guardian angel moment or something. For the first time in my career, I was in the mainstream.
Like, I've always been someone who has just felt a lot. I've always felt a lot. I've always wondered a lot, and I've always been drawn to art and creativity as a way to express myself. I am a combination of everything you've ever dreamed of, nightmares included. I've never been understood, so understanding my lifestyle secluded. Now my pain, it flows like fluid.
Your stuff sort of seems like a cross between poetry, rap, and sort of like more like speechifying of some sort.
It's a more interactive way of doing poetry. It's almost like a monologue in a way, where it's very theatrical and it's also like structured to invoke a lot of emotion. So I talk about like my experience being a millennial. I talk about my experience being a black woman. I talk about my experience being a gay black woman. You know, it's so many things in my reality that kind of makes me like a minority.
So being a triple minority, what are you pushing at with the writing?
I think I want to like invoke empathy. Years ago, my American history teacher told me there's always anarchy before order. So is this that transition or just hope for wishing? And am I out here talking to walls right now, or are you actually listening? If I do my job right, like my story will be so moving to you that it will spark something in you to want to change yourself that maybe you didn't even notice before. I personally like when I walk into a room full of 1%ers and I have to do a piece.
Feel some adversity.
Oh yeah, most definitely, and that goes back to the perspective. I think it's more powerful for me to perform in front of people who do not live my reality, might have the privilege of not living my reality, and then get to hear it from me. You know, that's gonna change something in them. Even the next time that they might think about saying a racial comment or some type of slur.
Infiltrated their consciousness.
Yeah, I'm infiltrating it's inception.
I wasn't born to be a face. I mean that in the wrestling sense, but neither a heel. Maybe like a knee or a hip. Maybe like a hip or a gut.
People that live here, sometimes artists that live here will say disparaging things about Cincinnati, and my thing to them is like, well, then do something good and maybe somebody will pay attention to you.
So you don't think that the conservative nature of the city enters the arts at all?
There have been some pretty fucked up bands from around here, and there are still scenes, especially underground. There's always been a really healthy underground here.
Tell me a little bit about the hip-hop scene here. Like, do you feel like you're, alone amongst a sea of punk folks doing your thing by yourself, or are you in a greater hip-hop context doing what you're doing?
It's kind of, I won't say splintered. You have a lot of little sects. Like, you have more of the boom bap kind of old school hip hop, and then you have a lot of the newer, younger, trendy, I guess, trap style. I don't really think I fit in with any of them, but I kind of fit in with all of them too.
There's something exciting about Cincinnati, about like the fact that, it makes me like extremely proud.
It's exotic.
Yeah, it says that I couldn't, no matter what, I could not have been on some normal trajectory.
Do you think that it's okay to have a broader career and still live in a smaller city like this?
I think it makes more sense.
You must have considered or thought about the idea of like, oh, I should move to LA, I should move to New York.
Well, I tried to live in New York. I signed a lease in Bushwick, but I was like really depressed, and I missed home, and I also missed how cheap home was.
I get so sick of people having to go to LA to make it, having to go to Atlanta to make it, having to go to Chicago to make it. We could easily be one of those. We have so much talent. This city needs to be resurrected, and I feel like it can easily be done. And knowing that, it would be so foolish for me to just up and leave my city.
Too many efforts, man. Too many concerns.
Yeah. This is funny because I normally tell people why I'm here, and it's like, I found a fucking great job, but you probably can't cuss,
Yeah,
right?
you can.
You can. Okay.
I'm still here because there's an opportunity to hustle. People still say yes.
Everyone says, yes, go do this. Keep making art, keep doing really cool things. And the energy is just there, so it keeps me here.
If you dream something up, there is kind of the bedrock, the fabric here to support that happening.
march slow, cavalry, like a frontline soldier who's lost home many years ago. But I'm with you when the Dunlop blew on the interstate, and you're stuck in Indiana a second day, on your way back to Cincy for winter break. I put you in a mantra, meditate, 'cause we got history, and it's no mystery. Breathe in and out and go easy.
Still remember me.
I'd like to think of myself as a sort of failed conceptual artist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're actually making work.
'Cause I'm
making
making stuff.
physical work.
Because a lot of the things are so conceptual, it's definitely kind of like an art project, but it's still a business.
When people see my work, then they be like, wow.
What industries is all the old money from here? Why they want to put money into arts? How impractical.
My art's kind of ever evolving, but I call it print-based sculptures. I've done everything from making wallpaper of the first 150 rap artists to record music, to dance floors for the civil rights movement.
The whole brand started on a concept. We make a series of pool floats called hot bot floats that are in the shapes of big boobs and eyeballs and hands. Another well-known product is white crew socks with old 80s and 90s female-fronted movie titles on the sides of them. Anything concept-based that's kind of funny.
At some point.
Tell me a little more about the social messages.
You know, there is a rise in the pro-women's movement right now, so I definitely think that my brand fits into that. A lot of people are noticing it for that. I had people using my pool floats as protest signs at the Women's March in Washington, D.C., and I couldn't have been more proud to have a product that people could carry at the march.
I take a lot of things from pop culture that I don't understand and rearrange them, sort of put them in a blender so they make a little more sense to me or to tell a story.
Okay, if you're working intuitively somewhat and you're putting things together that intuitively feel like they should go, you know, like you want to see them together, what have you learned from your own work?
This world's really fucked up.
It's only gotten worse.
And it's only gotten worse.
Liking stuff on social media is like saying, in a conversation.
Visionaries and Voices. Can you tell me a little bit about what goes on here?
Well, we provide artistic, cultural, and professional opportunities for artists with developmental disabilities.
Have several of the artists been able to really build a strong career in the arts?
Oh yeah, we have Courtney Cooper behind you, who's he's been here since almost the very beginning, and he's highly regarded, and so he draws these amazingly detailed maps of Cincinnati, very large format.
And he's doing this from memory, right?
I think he mostly works from memory, although occasionally he'll look through a phone book for street addresses and layouts.
Any other artists that have come out of here and gone on to make a name?
Well, Antonio Adams was one of the artists that started Visionaries and Voices.
So how did you get started making art?
Originally, I was like doing a portrait drawings of people, like since I was a kid, while I was like about 6 or 7.
And you've had attention from people outside of Cincinnati as well, right? Like, how does it feel to know that people, you know, from so far away appreciate your artwork?
Well, it's like, it makes me feel like spectacular, and people will respect me, who I am, what I do.
In everything we do, the underlying medium is time.
I'm still here because you can do anything in Cincinnati. Anything that you can do in any major town can be done here. And it can be done cheaper.
I'm still here because even after 25 years, it feels like home and the city keeps growing as I do.
I've stayed in Cincinnati because of the community here. I've built such a beautiful network, and leaving seems kind of impossible at this point for all the good reasons.
4 a.m.
What brought you back to Cincy?
I just won a travel grant from the school that I went to. I think it was like $20,000. So in Boston, $20,000 wouldn't go very far.
You're like, I'm going to Cincinnati.
Exactly what I thought. You gotta make this penny stretch as far as possible.
Coming from big artsy cities like Boston, New York, do you feel like there is a big community of artists? Is it as forward-thinking as those cities, or is it like Mark Twain said, 10 years behind?
I think it is not 10 years behind. And the difference between Cincinnati and New York City is, in New York, everybody's just trying to one-up each other. And in Cincinnati, people are doing it with integrity because they actually want to, not for bragging rights or like to boost their ego.
Trust in the moments. Trust every moment.
My final meal would be around a giant table.
Square-shaped elementary school pizza.
With a handful of great friends.
Lots of baguettes. We're talking French bread here.
Tortillas with Frank's Red Hot.
There would be meats and cheeses and little things that we could share.
Like some little mini oyster sliders.
Pork would, big pork roast would be fantastic.
I also enjoy a good beef Wellington, so that would be on the list. There would be some wine flowing, and we would just talk about life and memories and each other.
What got you interested in food and cooking? What got you started?
I had battled Crohn's disease like yourself for a large portion of my life and got put on a very restrictive diet. You're very familiar with those. So I took it really seriously, and so I taught myself how to cook while I was in school, and it kind of blossomed from there.
My mother didn't want to cook. She didn't want to be a housewife, so I learned to cook at a really young age.
You were cooking for the family?
Very young, yeah.
What were you making for your family?
Roasting chicken.
Roasting chicken at age what?
7-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was a picky eater. I wasn't really a big fan of food. And when I told my dad I was going to go to culinary school, he laughed at me. He said, "You actually have to like food to go to culinary school."
The Midwest is the iceberg lettuce of a national Caesar salad, but Cincinnati is a bako boot.
I'm curious about if you have sort of general philosophies around cooking and food and ethics, craft.
When I was a kid growing up in the industry, I wanted experiences that when I ate it, my brain shut down. I was just like overwhelming. And it's one of my favorite questions to ask young cooks. What was the last dish that you ate that made you moan? One was like, I had this amazing bowl of ramen. Another guy was like, oh, this cacio e pepe in Rome. Our chef from Soda was like, man, we did grilled bread with these anchovies I just got in with and it was just like, see the commonality here? And so...
What is the commonality?
So the commonality is look, Da Vinci had it right. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Here we have, at the restaurant specifically, we have a rule like, the creativity of a dish or something that we put on has no limits. It can be as creative as you want, but for us it has to still be delicious, and my mom and dad have to think it's delicious, right?
My philosophy stems from a lot of the strong women and my grandmothers and my great-grandmother. Everything was made from scratch. Everything was very simple. Much of what I do is grandma's cooking.
in our industry and in the world right now, it's all about artistry. That is the highest attribute that you can have in our industry right now. Right. And I think it's complete bullshit. The nasty little secret is if you really fixate on ingredient and craftsmanship before artistry, you'll be around forever. Especially if your focus is to create food that makes people moan.
How many salmons had to die so that I could live?
What would you say is the difference between, you know, sort of 10 years ago and now in terms of the culinary scene here?
It was a lot of chain restaurants and a couple really high-end chef-driven restaurants. That was pretty much your choices. It was either, you know, you were going out and spending your whole paycheck for the last 2 weeks, or you were going to a chain restaurant.
And what about now?
It's a lot younger now, like the chefs.
Which means what, more adventurous or unique?
Sure, to a degree, yeah. Maybe more approachable or less fancy fine dining sort of stuff, but also still coming from that kind of culinary background and pedigree where you can cook like that if you want and you can apply those things when you want to, but putting it in an atmosphere that's more laid back and more approachable.
The people of Cincinnati, once they got a taste of how good it could be, they wanted more and more and more. And what it hopefully did was give young chefs and restaurateurs the belief like, oh, we can do this. We can do what you see in other cities. We can do it here.
There is this deluge of people that are coming into restaurants that want the farm to table, and there are all these really talented people opening their own places.
We're overflowing with independent restaurants from independent chefs doing whatever is their vision.
It's not just the food scene, it's the revitalization of the urban center. And if you look at the city as a whole, people during whatever, I don't know if it was the 80s or whenever, when everybody went out to the suburbs, and now everybody's this huge sucking sound that's coming back into the urban center. People want that connection.
My sister was in town for a week. She had a craving. I drove her around to 3 different UDFs, and all of them were out of mint chocolate chip ice cream.
So much is right. The murals, the parks, the unpainted slate. But good grief, the segregation, the fear, all the smokestacks spewing toxins that settle back down onto this valley city. A lot of times it feels like a cancer trap. I find myself, and I think a lot of people do, driven forward towards a breaking point on a quest for what? For money, for comfort, for happiness? And I've got it easy. I've got a penis, I identify as a man, my skin is light enough. What the hell does a gay, trans, black woman do? I just think there's gotta be a way that doesn't have half the population slipping through the cracks. There are gold-hearted folks in Cincinnati, to be sure, and a lot of progress has been made, but we've still got some major issues to deal with. You grew up in Over the Rhine. What's your feelings about, you already know what I'm gonna ask. What's your feelings about what's happened? I mean, it's drastically different.
It's nice to see the buildings not rotting, but there's some discomfort about the people that are occupying the spaces now, and maybe the availability to other people that used to occupy those spaces.
You can be explicit. You can be explicit about what's going on. There's no reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of gray area in there, but gentrification can be really awful for a lot of people, and also really great.
There's no doubt that there is a revitalization happening, a renaissance in our city. But 50% of families are not part of it. 50% of families are still living in poverty, and of that, 80% are African American families. So we're not being inclusive enough in our renaissance.
I think the question becomes, at what cost and at whose expense?
The investment that we're seeing now can be profound, but we have to be cognizant of the racialized and class-based nature of all of these things.
So we need to be tougher on developers. You know, that's great. We want your development, but part of it has to be for people who are struggling to get by.
There is a black middle class in the city. They just happen to be highly dispersed. The median earning of black Cincinnatians, I believe, is about half of white Cincinnatians.
What's the root? Is racism below poverty as a root? Where do we start?
Yeah. Ooh. That's a difficult question because they're all tangled up together, right? So I think we start to unravel the string wherever we are. It is difficult to talk about gun violence without recognizing how racialized it is. But if you inquire about why it's so racialized, it's because our neighborhoods are highly segregated. And then when you start to look at segregation, that's when you start seeing histories of redlining, right? And disinvestment and jobs fleeing inner city areas. So all of these things, they influence each other, and they've created this complex social reality that we're all living with.
How segregated is Cincinnati?
Cincinnati is highly segregated. Maybe the 6th most segregated city in the country. So while Cincinnati is not the South, Southern attitudes, Southern policies have dictated the way our neighborhoods are built today.
There were a few complications.
Another thing in Cincinnati is our food deserts. Something as simple as that, like, it has all type of effects on just a neighborhood, families, people.
So in March, our Kroger closed. Right now, we're in the middle of a food desert, but we're also in the national headquarters of Kroger's, right? And there are disproportionate amounts of food deserts in the city.
You know, access to good food in these poor communities is slim to none. And we can do something about that. You know, we can say, look, if a grocery store, if you want this huge tax breaks to come downtown, then we want you to open a store in Bond Hill to give access to these poor families to healthy food as well.
I understand capitalism and bottom lines, but I think folks who believe in justice have to be as bold in their declarations and demands of these institutions as businesses are to cities, right?
If only every problem could be solved with a simple waltz.
I'm here because it's a great time to be a part of the city. There's a lot of growth, there's a lot of development, there's a huge need for diversity and a huge need for political progress here, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
I want to change the city, change the directive, the perspective of what's going on with Sam DuBose, the police brutality. I think, you know, the city is going in a bad direction, but I'm one of them type of brothers that's going to make it go in the right direction.
We are the model for police-community relations in this country.
You think that's warranted?
I do. I think we've come incredible. Yeah, first of all, let's make sure we don't mix up the University of Cincinnati Police Department with the City of Cincinnati Police Department. I mean, what happened at UC with Sam DuBose? That's not a model. That's the exact opposite of what policing needs to look like.
Right here is where a white police officer killed driver Sam DuBose for operating a motor vehicle while being black.
The officer, Ray Tensing, was indicted, but ultimately never convicted.
The egregious reaction of folks rallying around an officer to not simply support the police, but to further criminalize a man that has been murdered provokes a lot of historic feelings.
People got to see, you know, where people stand on just ideas about the value of human life, what's okay as an officer, you know, what we should just let go.
The pervasiveness of police footage is not resulting in consequences, right?
No,
or demotions.
We all watch murders happen.
Exactly.
And then life goes on.
We just have a different trauma now.
I'm a privileged white man who came from middle class, who's educated. I have to be willing to say to people who make racist remarks or say that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization, you know, I'm gonna call you out on that, and that is not okay. We have to understand that when black mothers have to have talks with their kids about what happens when you get pulled over by a police officer, that's never been part of our story, but it's a real part of their story. So we have to be willing to get out of this mentality that we were raised in, which is that, police officers are a great thing. They're always coming to help you, and actually try to understand what it's like to be fearful of your life when you're pulled over for a speeding ticket.
New youth craze is to take sleeping pills in an abandoned house and then start a fire. Let's see if you can get out.
So where are we going as a species? Are we going to blow ourselves up and leave the planet to start from scratch with this whole intelligent life thing? Or will we move forward with greater inclusion, deeper communication, artistic expression towards becoming some kind of global human organism where each individual is a synapse of ideas and creative energy firing off for the greater good of the whole? I think Cincinnati is an excellent microcosm for the rest of the country. Can music get us dancing together? Will art save us from ourselves, from our darker natures? Will we break bread or will we break down? I don't know. I don't know where we're going. And honestly, I change my mind every 10 minutes about Cincinnati. But through the process of making this show, I've made many new human connections. I've got a lot of new budding friendships. And that alone, despite some of the pessimistic conversations I've had, makes me hopeful. It's a lot harder to treat someone like shit when you know them. And I think that's the key. We need to reach out more. We need to sit down and we need to talk. After all, we are the only species on Earth that's developed such complex language abilities. That must be for a reason. Okay, you guys, take care of yourselves and keep wandering.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. He shall reign forever and ever. He shall reign forever and ever. That's what we got to hope for. He's going to straighten out this mess that we are made out of the world and our lives. And Lord of Lords, and ever, and ever. Hallelujah, hallelujah, all I can tell you, you better be ready, y'all.
I'm like, oh, thanks, buddy. Or something like that.